we're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We're News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Monday, January 13th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and you're watching News Generation. Joining us today is Cheska Dainha.
Happy Monday, everyone!
Happy Monday, and Ki Kim.
Good morning.
Morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So we're going to move on to our main discussion of the day. It's Monday, time to focus on some of the most pressing issues concerning our generation. Now, more than 2 weeks have passed since the Jeju Air Flight 2216 crash, which resulted in the deaths of 179 people. This devastating crash has left not only South Korea, but the entire world in shock. So starting off, how have people in South Korea been mourning and sharing in the pain and grief caused by this tragic accident?
I think I'm one of the many South Koreans here that really feel personal when it comes to the Muwon Airport. Definitely taken a big toll on a lot of us here in South Korea. A lot of families are still grieving. In addition to Muwon Airport, there are memorial altar being set up across the country, including Seoul, Gwangju and Gangwon-do, and visitors have continued to pay tribute to these memorial altars. Now, a lot of donations also have been happening, and celebrities also have taken part, such as BTS and J-Hope, who donated about 100 million won for the bereaved families, and many other celebrities actually donating to pay tribute. Now, there's a lot of concerts and festivals that have been planned at the end of the year that have been cancelled or postponed as a sign of mourning during this period as well.
Right. So as Cheska mentioned, we observed and saw a lot of nationwide mourning events taking place, especially during the national period of mourning, which we will mention later. But I really want to focus on what kind of support has been focused on and have been offered to the bereaved family members.
Sure. For the bereaved families, they had to stay at the airport for about a week or longer. And so many people flocked into the Muwon International Airport. Many volunteers tried to help them out, bereaved families and others with food and daily necessities. Experts like doctors, pharmacists, and lawyers all reached out to practice their expertise to help them. And according to Jeollanam province, about 5,000 volunteers gathered at the airport, and about 7,000 daily necessity items, including food, blankets, hot packs that warm you up, and more, were provided at the site. As you can see from the screen, some people pre-purchased coffee from the cafes around the airports, and convenience stores let people use microwaves, water heaters, and eating stalls at their convenience. A famous figure from the colonial class war showed up at the scene as well. Mr. An Yu-sung came down 3 times providing kimbap, seed rice roll with assorted vegetables, gomtang or beef bone broth soup, and even abalone pot roast for about 500 people for bereaved families, police, and firefighters there.
Right, so a lot of people lended out a helping hand, especially to those who are directly affected by this tragic accident. Now, this tragedy has had a particularly profound impact on our generation because, as many of our viewers may know, we've grown up witnessing and experiencing several large-scale incidents where hundreds of lives were lost. And this seems to have led young people to reflect on and find meaningful ways to honor and commemorate the victims. So could you please tell us more on how our generation is approaching this?
Yujin, as you said, we have actually experienced a lot of very unfortunate tragedies, and as much as it pains me to bring up the past tragedies, our generation went through the Seolho, the Seoul ferry incident in 2014, to Itaewon stampede just 2 years ago. And because these are such emotional and sensitive issues, there have been some concerns that have been raised over how we can actually be more proper and respectful during these times. So if you take a look at the screen, here's a recommended guideline that was published by the Seoul Office of Education. Now, in times of crisis, it is highly recommended that we do not share personal information of the victims or spread false or unverified information or accusations targeted towards certain people. And these guidelines are to protect both others and ourselves, because if we expose ourselves to too much of these emotional footage or falsely broadcasted information, it can really turn our emotion to target the wrong kind of people. Now, during the Itaewon stampede, I don't know if you remember, but there were a lot of unfiltered video footages spread across the media.
Immediately after the accident happened.
Exactly, and there were a lot of information that were created for the sole purpose of clickbaits with very sensitive titles, so that just to get views. And I think this is a very misleading behavior. media. So I think we really should be careful, especially in times where information or emotions can be very sensitive and heightened. Yeah.
And when it comes to footage, I kind of remember when this airplane crash first happened, there were actually videos that recorded the direct crash, and then it was even broadcasted in a couple of local broadcasters, but then a lot of viewers actually commented that this is not right, which ended off to these broadcasters blurring this footage. So I think that this is definitely proof that we're seeing some change, people understanding how to properly mourn or grieve those who were impacted by the accident.
And everybody receives information differently. So for some people, yes, unfiltered footage may give them more impact, but for some it might give them, it might come up past traumas or even cause traumas that they didn't want. So I think we really have to find the right balance when it comes to spreading these kind of information.
Definitely. Anything else you'd like to add, Ki?
Well, Itaewon incident, as a matter of fact, was a big issue for MZ's generation. I also personally went there to cherish the lost ones at the site back then. I'm sure Muan is the same way, and all the altars provided were the same. It was a very weird feeling, just saddening. The atmosphere there was so deep. Itaewon used to be the hottest place. And airport, if you recall from the movie Love Actually, is the place of love. In the movie, Hugh Grant says, with the airport in the background, love is actually all around, but the air was so heavy. It was even more shocking for MZers, as many young people have died and lost their lives in the Itaewon incident. You can see some small spaces or wall paintings there to remember those who lost their lives. And most importantly, many are now very much alerted about the safety issue. And I've been emceeing a lot of different events lately, and since then, the protocols have changed completely when I look at the script or any plan for any sort of event. Safety and evacuation plan in case of any emergency is now a must.
Right. I think we are witnessing something similar after this Jeju airplane crash, because there are more growing calls over airline, airplane, and airport safety. Now, going back to the Jeju airplane crash, once again, the Korean government declared a national period of mourning from December 29th, which is the day of the crash, to January 4th. And during this time, we saw considerable debate over what constitutes a proper and respectful way to mourn, as well as how far the mourning should extend. So what were the main points of this debate? And I also want to ask your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think this is a really important discussion because since we've, as you mentioned, since we had several of these national tragedies and crises, I think people have become even more sensitive when it comes to what is the proper scope or how should we actually pay tribute. So I actually saw and read this on social media, and there's a lot of debate going on about, how much or how far should you go during these kind of mourning period. For instance, I think there was one of the companies actually set off a firework event, and I think the government suspended the company for 6 months for setting off an event during this time. And celebrities have even received criticism and backlash for posting like their festive and celebrative lifestyles during this mourning period. Now, there's a divided opinion, and some people say during this mourning period, we really should, pause and maybe take a break from enjoying our festive activities to pay respect. There's another opinion, and these people argue that it cannot be forced on other people because they have livelihoods to continue. And more importantly, I think one of the interesting arguments that I heard is that you cannot peer pressure other people into being swept by this movement of sadness. That in and of itself is not even a proper mourning. So there's a lot of different opinions about how we should or what we should do in this period.
Right, and I think that the debate got huge because the time when this accident happened was the year end, which is when mostly year end festivities and New Year festivities take place.
A lot of gatherings, a lot of award ceremonies. Precisely so.
Right. And what do you, anything you'd like to say more, Ki?
Yeah, because of the year-end, a lot of year-end party were canceled. Even the New Year's event were all canceled to just pay respect to those who lost their lives. And as Jessica mentioned, some have a very careful approach, whereas some say it's too much. Just don't force me to be sad. And I understand why we need to mourn. It's a national disaster, and in a history, we've never seen such a big airplane crash in Korea. And honestly, some people have to move on. People have to make their livings. For example, people who are in the restaurant business, they lost so many customers, like you guys said, because it was year end and many people should have been festive. but they just simply didn't gather. They didn't drink, and even in the entertainment business, and here I'm not talking about those who are in front of the camera, I'm talking about the cameraman, audio, people all, create this sort of show behind the camera, and they have to survive. And for them, this time around could have been their, cash coming months,
right?
Because their income fluctuates throughout the year. And only my concern is you don't have to be forced to be sad and feel free to express your feelings, but feel very sorry for those who disgrace or even insult those who have lost their lives or who have lost their beloved ones. So let's just be human here.
Right. So we kind of get what both sides are arguing and their opinions. Now, to get deeper insight on this topic and debate, we'll be joined by an expert after this break. Stay tuned.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang.News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
So joining us this morning is Christy Chun, counselor at the Torch Trinity Counseling Center in Seoul. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, good to see you guys.
Good to see you again. So we first want to ask you, Christy, South Korea, as we mentioned earlier, observed a national period of mourning after the plane crash. And we want to ask you why you think such a period is necessary.
Yes, providing a designated time and place to express sorrow will help our nation and citizens to process and go through grief. Because this crash accident was so tragic, it was a huge shock and left great sadness to the whole nation. In times of these, people need time and space to mourn. Some may mourn quietly on a personal level, that should be respected, but there are people who want to outwardly express their respect and condolences publicly to the bereaved. Many people have been visiting joint memorial altars to express sorrow, and this helps people to express their sadness, and it would also be a comfort to the bereaved families. If people were to just carry on with their normal daily lives as if nothing happened, this would not help one get through grief. This national mourning period allows people to honor the souls of the victims and comfort the brokenhearted.
Christy, as you mentioned, people have different ways of paying tribute, but what are some meaningful and effective ways we can do to commemorate the victims and support their grieving families, in your opinion?
Yes, when such tragic incident occurs, we tend to freeze and think that we can't do much. But actually, there are ways for us to remember and support the bereaved families. First, it would be providing emotional support. More than 100,000 of citizens have visited the memorial altars to show respect and mourn for the victims. Some organizations, such as Neighboring Kakao, opened an online memorial space to commemorate. And on a personal level, I think expressing our sadness would help. Sharing the message of "we are sad with you," "you are not alone in this," "I'm here to mourn with you." These kind of messages could at least be a slight comfort to the bereaved families. It is also important for the bereaved families to feel like they are heard. The government should do their best to provide medical and relief aid, offer counseling services, and really accept the bereaved families' requests. We can also support financially, as it was mentioned earlier. And lastly, even if the mourning period ends as time would go by, we shouldn't forget and really try to commemorate the victims. Just like how our nation remembers the Sewol ferry incident of 2014 and the Itaewon incident of 2022, let's try to remember the lost ones and mourn together with those who have been heavily affected.
Okay, Councillor Jun, so tragic incidents like this don't just affect those directly involved. People get fatigued about the media coverage, or some are even, get saddened by this event for a long time. And general public can also experience trauma after seeing such events being covered by media. So what are some of the ways to overcome this kind of trauma?
One way to overcome indirect trauma is being intentional with media usage. Repetitive exposure to tragic events through media can increase certain symptoms. Therefore, reading the news articles or watching any content related to tragic events should be minimized. And as mentioned earlier, being careful about making any comments or accusations related to the event would be helpful. Also, it would help to normalize your symptoms. One may experience various traumatic symptoms such as difficulty managing emotion, feeling numb, experiencing physical pain or discomfort in your body, having intrusive thoughts, or negative view towards the world. All of these are some of the symptoms, but if you're experiencing these, normalize them by telling yourself, these are normal experiences that I am experiencing. And it will be good to know that these symptoms can last up until 4 weeks. If they do not subside, then seek for professional help such as counseling. And if you're not able to receive such counseling services, it would help to talk to someone whom you feel safe and secure with. Even just talking about how you feel and validating your emotions will surely help.
All right, some very helpful advice. That was Christy Jun, counselor at the Tor Trinity Counseling Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so we've heard from Counselor Chun, but we also asked our viewers what they think is the most appropriate way to extend condolences and support to those affected by disasters or accidents. And here's what 3 of them shared. Our first comment for this Monday is by Roddy Russell Jr. 93. I'm from New York City. I remember experiencing 9/11 when I was in 3rd grade. People laid many different flowers at the memorials around the city. Robert Dawson 890 says, a prayer and a visit to a memorial site to lay a white flower. Our final comment, Park Daeon 85. Personally, I avoid saying I understand your pain for the reason that we cannot fully understand how people feel, and I try to accompany them in whatever they allow me. So we've listened to our viewers on the various ways they extend their condolences to those affected by tragedies or accidents. Now, ending off our episode today, while we hope to never experience such tragedies again, we know the unexpected can happen. If and when it does, what kind of mindset or approach do you think we should adopt to help our society recover and heal and move forward from the scars of these incidents?
That is such a great question, and it really wasn't easy to answer this one because you never know it can happen to you.
Right.
You're never the exception. And actually, when you were reading the comments, the last one kind of touched me. It's really hard to say, I understand your pain.
Right, we cannot 100% understand what they're going through.
Exactly, because we're not in the same shoes, unfortunately, as they are. So when I thought about this question, I thought, how would I want other people to feel if I were one of the victims? And the thought that I came up with, I would want people to celebrate their lives and really appreciate what they have right now, because life is so precious and fleeting. And celebrate it with gratitude. And if anything, I would not want them to be swept away by too much grief or too much mourning, and that they remember and not forget, but also not forget what is really important. Yeah.
Right, so putting yourself in their shoes, not forgetting, not forcing.
Exactly.
What about you, Ki?
One of the good suggestions that actually was showing up on our viewers' comment was the visiting the site or the altar. Well, not actually site, but the visiting the memorial altar. I don't know if you recall, we had this movement called 정인아 미안해. That's like, I'm sorry, Chongin. It was a little girl who's been abused in a child care center.
Right.
And as a father who was raising kid, I felt depressed to see all those news, to see those footage. But then it made me feel better when I actually went to the memorial altar and then lay down the flower, and hopefully you are well up there. But it makes you at least feel better. So if you are traumatized with all these news, actually moving and going to an altar, actually it's going to help you. But whatever we do, those who are gone cannot return. And those who lost their loved ones may grieve forever. And what we need now is not a prejudice or any rash decision. The Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport has actually said in a press briefing that any airplane crash the investigation can take up to 3 years at longest. So we just need a precise investigation into the case, no matter how long it takes. Like I said before, if there's one thing we learned from the previous incident, just like Itaewon incident, is the awareness in safety.
Yes.
So find out the exact cause of the accident, punish those who are responsible for it, to show the world this is what happens when you deal with a plaintiff, dealing with many people's lives, and most importantly, take precautions to prevent any accidents from happening.
Right, and if I can add on, I just want to say it's okay not to be okay because this was such a big and tragic accident and incident. So if you need help, don't hesitate and actively seek for help. And last but not least, our hearts once again go out to all those who were affected by the crash. Our hearts are with you.
Yes.
And that's all from us today, but NewsGen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Cheska Dainho.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Thank you, and Ki Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.